To this now, Professor Thabo Ditsele says the BELA Act is not a silver bullet for solving the country's education challenges. Last week, the President signed the proclamation for its full implementation. Now, remember, the President had allowed for the process of consultation on clauses 4 and 5, and when that time lapsed, he then ordered its full implementation after the clearinghouse mechanism said it should be implemented. Joining us now is TUT researcher Professor Thabo Ditsele, who joins us live now. Prof, good evening to you and thank you so much for your time. You are someone who has looked at the issue of language in greater detail. Before we even get into some of the contentions you make in your opinion piece, what is your reaction to the decision by the President to then agree to sign the Act into law in its entirety?
Thank you very much, Bongi, for having me, and thank you to your viewers. As a sociolinguist and a linguistic anthropologist, I have to confine myself to one section, which is section 5. That is the one that talks about language. Now, from where I'm sitting as a linguist, I think the President took the right decision to approve the act in its entirety. So to your questions, I'm happy with the decision.
You contend in your opinion piece that the opposition to clauses 4 and 5 has a lot to do with the power struggle between English and Afrikaans. Tell us more.
If you study the history of language in South Africa, we have two main eras. The first era that is that of the Dutch, which started in 1652, and it lost power in 1822 when Lord Charles Somerset of the Cape decided that English was going to be the sole official language of the Cape. So since then, the Dutch, or as today we speak, the descendants of the Dutch, have never accepted that decision, especially after the South African War of 1899 to 1902. Where again they lost the battle. So if you look at the fight really is not about whether isiZulu should be used to teach, whether Setswana should be empowered. This is a power struggle between English and Afrikaans that you and I should not be part of.
And when it comes to the languages in and themselves, because a lot has been said about this as well, and even some of, the attitudes of some who frown upon, for example, mother tongue education. In your view, when you look at Clause 5, does it go far enough to ensure that there's a change in mindsets, but also there's a transformation here when it comes to some of our languages?
Look, the Act is transformative in nature. It seeks to ensure that South African children go to the same schools. As I said in the opinion piece, I don't buy the argument that is forwarded about mother tongue education. And I've gone at lengths to explain why I believe it is not, even if we say it's something that has results, it is not the only tool that we can use to achieve the successes that we want. At CODESA 1 and 2, we made a conscious decision that we want to build a unitary state where children, regardless of race, go or attend the same schools. So Section 5 ensures that a child who lives in Swartkop, who lives in Eldoret, can go to the nearest school, even if that school does not offer the language that they speak. I mean, you and I, know Centurion very well. There are many schools in Centurion that cannot cater for people like you and I who have moved into the area in the last 20 years. We have to struggle. We have to take our children to private schools because schools that they can walk to cannot accommodate them because of a language policy that was written before 1994 and copy-pasted in the post-1994 era.
And if we still want them to even be taught in their mother tongue in a proper way, it also still becomes another issue. But would you say that the country misdiagnosed the problem of poor performance then when it comes to mother tongue?
Definitely. There is laziness when it comes to understanding why our learners are not performing well. I make an example of other Anglophone countries, children who are taught in English in Botswana, in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, in Ghana, you name it, in Nigeria. Why aren't they having the same discussion? Why are the children not struggling? They are not struggling because people who teach them English right from the foundation phase are people who themselves are strong in English. So what do we do in South Africa? Anybody who raises their hand to say, I want to be an English teacher, even when they passed grade 12 English at 55, we allow them to become English teachers. And when they are unable to transfer, or when they transfer the bad quality of English that manifests itself into poor quality, we then blame it on English. We are scapegoating English. If English was a problem, then how come children in Nigeria, in Ghana, are performing better than our children?
So do we need to relook at, and I ask this when it comes to also the training possibly that the teachers receive before they go to the classrooms? Because in some instances, when you speak to those in the sector, they say that it may not necessarily speak to what they encounter in the classrooms as well.
Yeah, what the thing is, Bongiwe, we do not have a systematic approach when it comes to issues of language. We treat them as piecemeals. We've never really had a conversation where we say, what type of an English teacher do we need in front of the learners? We just said, anybody who is interested, they may go. And let me give this example from the STEM stream. When it comes to STEM, we don't allow someone with a 55 in mathematics to study engineering. We want top quality mathematics graduates. Why can't we do that? Why can't we do the same with language? Because language is a science. You know, we study it as linguists. Why don't we say, in order for you to be an isiZulu lecturer, a teacher, this is the mark that you should attain in high school. If we did that, I'm telling you, you will start to see a change in the performance of our learners. So our learners are struggling for 12 years in school. They are struggling because some learners may even be unfortunate that from grade 1 to grade 12, they've never met someone who speaks English well. Every teacher that they met struggles in English. They even teach English in isiZulu because they themselves are struggling. That's where I say we should start, as opposed to just scapegoating. And we make an assumption that if we suddenly teach our children in Setswana, all of a sudden the teachers that are teaching them currently will be star teachers. They're not going to be. It's the same ones that should be teaching them. We're barking at the wrong tree here.
And would you say that in your view, are we not able to do that because we don't know how to? Or is it because there's a lack of will to do that?
It could also be that, here's a problem that we have when it comes to language. We assume that all of us are experts. There's never been a conversation in South Africa where people like us, who are linguists, are called to come and propose models for language use and language management in the country. The assumption is that just because you speak, that makes you an expert. And I'll use an analogy of a car. When it comes to a car, we know who a mechanical engineer is and what they do. We know what a motor mechanic does. And we know that you and I just drivers. But when it comes to language, all of us are mechanical engineers. We know what is best. We don't even have to sit around the table and discuss the language question. We've had job summits. We've had tourism in Davos, we've had CODESA 1 and 2, but when it comes to language, just because MPs think they know, they just decide on their own, and they keep us out of the conversation. And when the results come like they are, we blame it on English.
And it brings up something that I want to borrow from your opinion piece. You say, when some hear mother tongue education, they hear inferior quality of education. Attempts to sell mother tongue education, even in democratic South Africa, are usually received with suspicion. And this question lingers in many people's minds. Where is the sleight of hand this time round?
Yes, this is what happened in 1951. UNESCO says, for best results, teach a child in their mother tongue. What does the apartheid regime do? The apartheid regime decides to tweak, to manipulate that noble report to introduce Bantu Education Act, a watered-down version, a bad quality. So in the minds of a person who speaks an African language, if you want to give them bad quality of education, do that through his or her mother tongue. So the damage that was done by Blind to Education Act of 1953 is still with us today, even if they're not born then. So when you today in 2024 say, okay, let's go back to mother tongue education, many black parents will ask, what is the trick this time? What is it that you want to hide from our kids? So we have to understand the context that the damage wasn't done by them. The damage was done by the administration of 1953 that said mother tongue equals poor quality of education. We need to go there to change the mindset if we ever want to go this route. So for people who oppose BELA Act to just say, no, the solution is right in front of us. Let's just teach our children in mother tongue. Are we going to have one primary school for every language group in Centurion, 12 primary schools for different, and then what happens to university? Are we now going to have universities that only teach in Zulu, universities that only teach in Chivenda? People must give us a model. Don't just say we need mother tongue education, but you don't give us a model to work with. If you want us to follow the Afrikaans model, where you can go to primary school, high school, and then go to Stellenbosch or University of the Free State, are you saying we should multiply that model when it comes to Chivenda? Is it sustainable? Is that how you build a cohesive society? I would argue no. That doesn't augur well for nation building.
As I listen to you, it's very clear. We need more than just an act to be able to get this one right. There are efforts that need to be put in place in order to address even the deep-rooted challenges that you speak about. Because, for example, you find some of the parents don't even want to speak to their children in their mother tongue because they look at that as inferior. And when the more a child speaks in English, they think that the child is intelligent. And then you then have people in workplaces who look down upon some of their languages as well. When someone speaks in their mother tongue, that's the way that they can express themselves. They think that you are inferior and you are uneducated. So it's going to take more than an act in order to be able to redress and deal with this problem that apartheid also left us with.
Definitely. There's more that needs to happen for the mindsets to change, But this is the legacy of the country that we come from. Can I even touch on the point of the relationship between language and power? If your language does not pay bills, you're not going to follow it. You're not going to sustain it. You're not going to encourage it to be spoken. We know that in South Africa, there is a pecking order when it comes to the 12 official languages. We know that English is right at the top. This conversation is happening in English, the language of power. Now, parents look at that. They look at people who get jobs, people who end up being professors like me, and say, what is their command of the language, of the English language? They say, I want my child to be like him. I want my child to one day work at the studio. I want my child to hold this job. All these things taken together, they say to parents, this is the direction that we need to go. If you try to sell and say, you can put bread on the table through Xitsonga, a child will say, or a parent will say, okay, can you list 10 people who are upper middle class, who are feeding their families using the language? And then you struggle. And the parents say, I can name so many people who look like me, who have you are eking out a living using English. So it's that dynamic of the power that is entrenched in English. So how do you dislodge that? The first thing that you do is have an honest and open conversation, not piecemeal conversations. Those do not assist us.
Prof, still a lot to pick your brain on, but thank you so much for talking to us this evening and really getting us started, because this is a conversation that really continues to open the lid on many others and what needs to be done and just how much of damage has been done and still needs to be dealt with. But thank you so much for talking to us this evening. Appreciate your time. That was TUT researcher Professor Thabo Ditsele.